Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm SpookyLith. I'm a new channel. I'm primarily doing gaming let's plays, some movie reviews, some gaming reviews. But another thing I want to do in this channel, or what I'd like to do if I can get away with it, is to sort of just talk about, things in the news, recent events, things going on out there, and just offer what I believe to be an alternate opinion on some of this stuff, because there's a lot of really, really bad takes out there, especially when we're coming into the political sphere. The left wing, right wing dynamic, the whole conservatives, especially coming out of America, a lot of this stuff. But we do get it here in the UK too. There's just a lot of really shitty takes out there on both sides too. I do consider myself probably more on the liberal side. In fact, you probably would call me a liberal for a lot of my views. For example, when it comes to voting time in this country, people get up in arms and they're like, I don't want to get because I want to get to the point of this video, but people get up in arms, do you vote Labour, which is our left wing, or do you vote Conservatives? Conservatives, which is our right wing. Now, this country leans kind of left anyway, but both governments are also quite conservative. But there is a difference, and it is our version of the left and right, but it is less extreme than the Americans. So people will say to me, are you voting Labour or Conservative? Or Lib Dem or one of the other ones? And I'll be like, I'm voting Green Party. And I always vote Green Party. And people will be like, it's a wasted vote and it's a blah, blah, blah. And that's such a shitty take. Because in this country, it's always left, it's always right. Conservatives or Labour, basically never anybody else. And it's like, if people would just for a minute use their brains and think, we've never had anything else in charge other than Labour and Conservatives, maybe, just maybe, if people just went and voted for just a different party, we'd actually see some changes here. But anyway, that's a topic for another video. The point of this one is this recent event, this recent situation that just happened in the US. It was the Club Q shooting. It happened on, I believe, the 19th, so a couple days ago now. I believe 5 people were killed in a shooting at a club during a drag event. Now, there are so many bad takes out there when it comes to LGBT plus situations in general. There are so many bad takes, and all of them simply boil down to one side saying it should be okay to just have whatever sexuality or gender identity you want, and especially with the far left leaning, a lot of it is centered around and having other people treat me as such, and basically respect that about me, respect that I identify this way, you should respect it and you should address me as such. And then on the other side, the argument is, first of all, in a direct response to the gender stuff would be, I don't want to identify you that way because to me you're still XYZ. If you're a female to male, they'll say, well, I still think you're a female. And if you're a male to female transgender, they'll say, well, I still think you're a male regardless of your transition. And to take that a step further with the right wing, there's also a general anti-gay, anti-homosexual rhetoric anyway that in some way it's not natural, shouldn't be tolerated, and more importantly, I shouldn't have to see it. So those are the general, broader stances that both sides seem to take on this situation. We'll come back to that. So, Club Q, I don't know what type of club it is on a normal day, but for whatever reason, they had to, I didn't mean that in such a negative context, but they held an event that was a drag event, and I don't know if this is a LGBT bar in general. I should probably have done a bit more research. I just can't remember. And it's not really important for my topic here anyway, and I want to focus on the important part. So it's a club. I'm assuming it's a nightclub, or it's a club for adults to get drunk, party, whatever, and they seem to hold LGBT events, and they had a drag event. And they advertised this drag event as being for all ages. Now, right from the beginning, and one of the things, right from the beginning, when someone says, I'm holding an all ages event, that obviously implies that families can come down, parents, children, with the parents, teenagers, everyone. It's all ages, everyone's welcome. And generally what that means is it's going to be a clean event, like a family-friendly movie, like a PG-rated movie, or like a universal-rated movie as we have in the UK. It means it's going to be the kind of content that is, feel good, happy vibes, not much dark stuff. There's not going to be sexual content. There's not going to be violence. It's going to just be wholesome. So when we think of family friendly or all ages, we generally think of wholesome stuff, right? So they're holding a wholesome family friendly event centered around drag performers. Now, what is drag? Drag is essentially commonly, because I don't know if it works the other way around too, but commonly it's men who dress up as women. They get over the top makeup, get wigs on, long hair, all these elaborate fancy dresses, dress up as women, and then perform in some way, whether they do a singing, some kind of dance routine, or whether they do just like a performance, right? They dress up as men, dressing up as women and performing, and that's what drag is. Another name for drag, especially outside of the performance sphere, we'll say, is cross-dressing, because that's essentially what it is. And again, it's commonly associated with men dressing up as women, and that's what you'd call a cross-dresser. Because when a woman dresses up as a man, no one seems to notice. In fact, in a lot of circles, it's considered like this attractive thing, like, oh, she's tomboyish, or, she's got that kind of style. So a lot of the time, cross-dressing drag is in reference to men dressing as women, because it stands out more to people, because it's, it just stands out more, right? So this was a drag event, men dressed as women, and it was an all-ages event, meaning anyone of any age can come and enjoy the entertainment, get some food, have a drink, whatever's going on, right? So immediately, the first shitty take that's come out of this situation, and I've got the tab open here, and it's this, I don't know him, I'm British, so Tim Pool, not entirely sure who he is, I've only heard him referenced by other people, but I take it, I don't know if he's a conservative, but he seems to have that kind of circle around him kind of agreeing with his stance. And he had this shitty take here. We shouldn't tolerate paedophiles grooming kids. Club Q had a grooming event, right? That's the first bit we're going to focus on. But one moment, I just need to go make a fresh brew because I need a brew for this conversation. I'll be right back. Hello, I'm back. Sorry for that. I mean, I know there was no pause for you, but there was a few minutes there for me as I went and made myself a coffee, lit myself up a cigarette. And we're going to continue the conversation. So Mr. Tim Pool came up with this take that this event at Club Q was a grooming event. Now, without speaking directly to Tim Pool and knowing exactly what was going through his head as he said this, because first of all, that's just a shitty take. Just simply because of the circumstances of what actually happened, which is that people were just murdered in cold blood at a private, event at a club, right? So that alone, to call the whole thing a grooming event after people have just been murdered is a bit of a ridiculous take. But whatever, we'll put that to the side because we've already seen the precedent set with Alex Jones. If you talk about an event where people have been killed and you start talking about the, Sandy Hook was XYZ, right? Whatever. If you do that, we've seen the precedent set. You're not allowed to do that. And that's what I feel. I agree with some of the other takes that he's done that here. Some people have just died and he's calling it a grooming event full of pedophiles. Shitty take. But putting that to the side, he's calling this event a grooming event. Now, why is he calling it a grooming event? We can only imagine, but the consensus seems to be because this was a drag event that was for all ages, thus allowing younger people to be present. In his mind, drag, men dressing up as women, is associated with sexuality. It's a sex thing. So to have young people at this drag event is pedophilia and grooming because drag in his world, in his mind, drag is sexualized. Now, that is a shit take. Why is that a shitty take? Simple. Because he's ignorant. I don't know him personally, so I don't know what he knows and he doesn't know, but based on that take, I'm assuming, which I know a lot of the people that agree with him also have, is ignorance. They think men dressing as women is sexualized and only sexualized. And to me, that makes me question what this guy's been getting up to in his free time. Because for most people, I don't think when they think of a man in a dress, I don't think their immediate thought is sex. Personally, I imagine most straight people see a man dressed as a woman and don't immediately just think of sex. Now, the reason he's pulling this sexuality from this drag event is because, like I mentioned before, on the other side of drag, which is generally centered around performances and performance art, you have what's known as cross-dressing. Excuse me. Now, on the gay scene, we'll call it, on the LGBT scene, the nightlife, the culture, on that side of things, cross-dressers, that is something that within the gay community is sexualized. And that's typically, you'd have a man, he throws on some lingerie, but ultimately he's just a man in lingerie or some kind of feminine outfit. And, people will meet them, and that is a sexualized thing. And in the community, we call that cross-dressing, and another name is TV transvestite. And that can have a sexual connotation in the gay scene, because cross-dressing is something that people in the gay community find attractive. It's something they're into. And that's what makes me question Mr. Tim Pool, where he assumes that drag is sexualized, because I feel like you would only know about cross-dressing if you was in the gay scene anyway. But putting that to the side now, he's called this event a grooming event because he's associated drag with cross-dressing with sexuality, and therefore this is a sexual event that's invited young people. That is a ridiculous take. That is absolutely ridiculous. There's a difference between cross-dressing and drag. There's a difference between sexualized cross-dressing and identity cross-dressing, which is where people are starting to then get confused with the difference between a transgendered person and a drag queen or a cross-dresser. So there's a lot of ignorance there, and I imagine this kind of person has not bothered to take the time to learn the distinction between those things, and in the end lumps all those things together, and that's how they come up with shitty takes that a drag event is somehow grooming. Once again, for that clarity, a drag queen, drag queens, people dressed in drag, is not in any way inherently sexual. There is a culture in the LGBT scene, and don't get me wrong, it's not just LGBT, because there are, well, I guess it still sort of falls into that, but there are couples, like straight, in this scene, there are couples, men, female, straight couples, that will consider, threesomes and such, with cross-dressers, with transvestites, because that's just something they want to experiment with. Does that make them heinous, monster, whatever, because they want to engage and try that kind of thing out? No. And one of the reasons it doesn't is because, well, no, let's not, I'm just saying that's something that does happen. It's not just like a gay man and a gay man dressed up as a woman and that's a gay thing. There are straight couples, and there's also straight women that will sleep with cross-dressers who can be a straight, because that's another thing about cross-dressing, is that it doesn't have to be associated with homosexuality either. There are straight men that still enjoy dressing up as women, they moonlight as, and might even have a feminine character, but still identify as straight cis men and just enjoy that, and there are women that enjoy that in a man. It's true. So to call it gay is wrong, and to call it sexualized by default is wrong, because the difference between a sexualized cross-dresser and a drag queen is night and day. Drag is a performance art. It's been said countless times now that back in the olden days, in the Shakespearean days, and in old performance, men would dress up as women and play the women roles because they had a freaking, misogynistic attitude that women couldn't perform. So men would dress up as women and perform, and all sorts of stuff, right? Drag is not inherently sexualized, and it makes me question the individual that assumes that it is, because what have they been tuning into where drag is sexualized? We have in the UK, we have a TV show, I don't know if it's already come out or it's coming out, which is about drag queens taking a straight cis man, dressing him up as a woman, getting all the makeup on, all of this, and then having them perform because it's entertaining. Because people just enjoy it for the entertainment of it, nothing to do with their sexuality. So immediately, shitty take, calling it a grooming event, implying that a drag queen has some inherent sexuality to it. It's only sexualized if you sexualize it somehow, because generally, drag queens just go on there and sing songs and just do performance art. So one shitty take aside, the ignorance that drag queens, cross-dressers and transvestites, and transgenders are all the same thing. They are completely not the same thing. Because another aspect of that, like I was mentioning, the cross-dresser transvestite side of it. Because there's a difference between a cross-dresser and a transvestite too. Cross-dressers are generally the guys who will throw on some lingerie and that'll be a fetishized thing, and we call that cross-dressing. Whereas a transvestite is someone who goes that step further and will also throw on a wig, some makeup, and maybe a dress, and those are the people who moonlight as women, even though they still identify as men. They like to dress up as women, feel feminine for a while, and just have that experience. They don't have to be gay, but that is generally where the sex side of it comes from. Drag queens dress up to sing and to dance. They don't dress up for sex, but they could also do that and be considered a cross-dresser. And for the people who are confused now, you then have transgenders. Now, a transgendered person is very, very, very different from a cross-dresser. There is one crossover, and so this is where we're getting into, because the transgender community, there's a lot of sensitivity because of how hostile things are. Because you can't do anything without someone else telling you how to live your life, it becomes a very sensitive situation. And don't get me wrong, on that left liberal side, there's a lot of problems there too. But we'll get to that. Let's focus on the topic at hand. But I do want to quickly make the point that a transgendered person is a person who, we'll put it simply, is changing, or, the word transforming themselves full-time into another gender. Whereas a cross-dresser or a drag queen, they tend to just moonlight sometimes. They'll just dress up sometimes, but they still identify as cis. A transgender doesn't identify as cis to their birth gender. They identify as cis to their transgender. And the only reason we identify those people as trans and not as cis is simply because it would just, people just are so sensitive to it on the other side, where they refuse to acknowledge that a person who's transitioned can be considered cis to their transition gender. So we identify them as, they're transgendered instead of cisgendered. The only reason we make that distinction is because the other side complains so much. But anyway, a crossdresser is, or a drag queen, is a cis man who identifies as a cis man that enjoys dressing up in what are considered women's clothing, because as we also know, you go back a couple of years, you go back 100 years, 200 years, men were wearing dresses and stuff. That was the masculine look. It's just changed recently, and clinging to this idea that this is what a man is now is ridiculous, because it changes, and it also changes culture to culture. There is cultures like the Middle East and Muslims that are wearing long outfits that look like dresses to some people. I'm not saying they have a proper name, and it's just a difference in culture. But there are cultures there where the men do wear dresses, and no one's got a problem with that as a sign of masculinity. It's only when someone does it in this trans way or in this drag queen way. So a transgendered person is different from a drag queen or a cross-dresser, because they're not necessarily just dressing up in women's clothing, because a lot of transgendered people will wear their original cis clothing for a long, long time before they ever actually come out and identify as their transgender. And that's probably because of the fear of it. But there's also some transgendered people who will immediately come out in feminine clothing. They'll even throw wigs on if their hair hasn't grown out and wear makeup, even if they don't necessarily look as feminine as they might want to because the feminization from their hormone treatment hasn't started yet. They'll just go straight away because, this is me, and I'm not waiting for some biological change to happen to embrace who I really am. Other transgenders will wait just because they fear the backlash of looking like a man in a dress. Because unfortunately, a lot of trans people have to deal with that. But a drag queen, anyway, is not a sexual concept. There is a sexual side to men dressing up as women for sex. Drag is not that. Drag is performance art. It's straight, oftentimes it's straight cis men choosing to dress up as women for the performance. For the performance of it. For the art, right? It's art. So calling it a grooming event is ridiculous. And when someone says I'm holding an all ages event, that means it's a wholesome event where there's not going to be violence, there's not going to be sexuality. And this takes me on to my next point, which I'm not sure this guy said it, but I know it's a common take with sort of the conservative side of this argument, which is the idea that you can't have an all ages drag event. Because again, in their minds, drag is something they've sexualized. They're saying this is sexual regardless of what's actually going on in the performance. However, if I had a child, right, and I saw my Facebook feed, oh, we're holding an all ages event at so-and-so club, come on down, bring the family. If I, as a parent to my child, then decide, looking at that and think, I'm going to take my child to this event, or if I have a teenager and my teenager wants to go and I say, yep, you can go, and I give my child permission to go there, then, and I feel like the Conservatives should agree with this, then who are you to tell me that I'm doing something wrong with how I raise or parent my child? I have looked at this event. I have decided, based on my understanding, that this is okay for my child to see, my family to see. I want this, and not that I want this, but I'm okay with this. I accept this, and I'm happy to take my family there. You have no right to then try and circumvent my decision making for my family. You've looked at it and you said, I don't want my child there. That's your right. It's your family, your child. You do not have to bring them there. But I've decided I want to take my child there. Then you shut the hell up and you don't tell me how to parent my child. It's an all ages event. I've deemed it okay to go there with my family. I will take my family there and you will not tell me what to do with my family. And I feel like the Conservatives are missing the mark there because they're very much about that kind of thing. And they're missing that. They're not realising that parental consent is parental consent. Even if this was a cabaret show, even if this was a more adult thing, because it's listed as all ages, meaning it's family friendly, but let's just say it wasn't. Let's say it was a risque cabaret show, right? And my 17-year-old wants to go see it, and 17-year-olds are legally allowed to go there, of course. But, you know, it's not for kids, and I don't even think this event was aimed at kids, because it's all ages, but we'll say family friendly. But if I say it's all right, let me put it in a different context. If a movie comes out, and it's what we have in the UK is an 18 plus movie, and my 16, 17-year-old wants to go with their friends, watch this movie, that's my discretion as a parent to provide parental consent. Because what did they say? What did they used to put on album covers? Parental advisory, whatever, right? Let's just get that up. Parental, can't spell because I'm all amped up. Well, amped up. Parental advisory, explicit content, right? What does that say? It says parental advisory, as in you as a parent have to look at this and make that decision as to whether or not you want your young person to be consuming that media. So once again, if I give my youngster, my offspring, my family permission to do something, then I don't want to hear any other person telling me that, making that decision for me. I've decided it's okay. I don't need you to come there with guns, because this is not my final point. I don't need you coming there with guns, putting my child in danger and having them witness actual terror attacks, murder, fucking bloodshed. I don't need you going there and doing that, because I've given my offspring permission to be there. And it's not for you to then come and tell me and circumvent that decision making. So that's something else I think the Conservatives have missed the mark with. It's up to me as a parent if my child can go to that event, not you. If I look at it and I think, oh, this is over-sexualizing, they're grooming my child, that's for me to decide, not you. It's a legal event. It was clear where it was going to be. I've given permission for my offspring to attend. There will be no more discussion. It's my child. So another shitty take is that this is something that that parents needed help with. No, I've given permission. So anyway, short pause. And so, yeah, that brings me on to the final point now. And this is for the people that think it's okay that someone went in there and shot people because they're pedophiles, groomers, whatever, right? That's a ridiculous take, and we've covered why. But on the other side of that is, it's not okay to take my own child to a drag event because you've decided it's sexualized when you don't even know the distinction between drag and sexualized cross-dressing. But whatever, you've decided it's not okay for me to take my child to a drag event, but you have also simultaneously decided it's okay for my child to be around fucking gunfire, death, screams and terror. I sent my child, or I've taken my family or whatever to a drag event voluntarily to see drag performers, drag queens perform because we find it entertaining. We saw it on TV, thought it was cool, and my local club's doing a live event. Yeah, I'm going to go down, I'm going to support my local business, I'm going to be a part of this because I enjoy that type of content. You've then taken it upon yourselves to turn that event, a family-friendly all-ages event, into a fucking terror attack bloodshed, right? What gave you the right to do that to my child and to my family? And that's the question you really need to be asking yourself. What's worse? A bunch of men dressing as women doing a dance and a song for entertainment purposes only, or people literally getting fucking murdered right in front of my child's eyes. And not only that, my child being at risk of being shot. My cis, straight child that I've taken as a cis, straight person to an event that I've gone to watch for entertainment purposes because I enjoy the culture. Who are you to put their lives at danger? And what's worse, their lives literally being on the line, potentially getting murdered, or them consuming a very classical style of performing art that's been around for generations upon generations. You make the decision. It's not that hard. It's a simple, logical decision. What's worse? My child witnessing literal cold-blooded murder, or my child watching a bunch of men in frocks dance around? You tell me. And I don't want to hear the wrong opinion. I'm joking. Anyway, this is SpookyLith. Just wanted to point out some of the really shitty takes I've been seeing. So this channel is primarily going to be like, gaming and movies, but, I also do want to talk about things that are happening. And I don't so much want to talk about the horrific thing that happened here. People's lives were lost. It's horrible. Forget how they align politically, forget how they identify gender-wise or sexually or any of the above. People were murdered in cold blood by a psychopath fucking terrorist. We don't need it, we don't want it, we don't condone it, we don't support it. We want nothing to do with it. It's disgusting. But to address some of the takes coming out of the right wing, and this is just sort of the one I've seen highlighted. I am British, so I only sort of catch the American stuff through other medias and stuff. But just to address some of those takes, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And the reason, and I'm going to do another video about LGBT stuff in general, but I want to make the point here too. The reason why a take like this is ridiculous, and I'm going to save this for another video, and I'm just going to say, let people live their lives. If I decide that an event is okay for my family to go to, and I take my family to that event, you do not tell me any different. I don't care. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to know. If you find out that the person organising the show was some corrupt person who put a tweet out, tell me that this person's corrupt. I can use my own brain to research into that and make that decision. But if I've done my research, I've looked into an event, it's my local place, I know some of the people there, or I know some people who have been there, or maybe I've been to this club before, it's on my Facebook page, I've decided this event's okay for my family, you stay out of it. Simple. And with that, I'm going to end this video. It's SpookyLith. Thank you for watching. Leave your comment below. Tell me if you think I'm wrong. Tell me if I've missed something important. Add to the opinion. Add to the conversation. Let's talk about it. Leave a comment below. Like, subscribe, and thank you for being here. I'm new. The quality is not amazing, but we'll get there, and we'll get there together. So once again, SpookyLith. I'm out here.